Glad to have all of you here. So let's talk about VMware and what we can do on Amazon or with Amazon, and how we try to satisfy those needs in terms of ITOps, modern applications in finance or government sector. And some of you might think I only know VMware as an infrastructure company, virtualization, and that's correct. We've been doing that for probably more than 20 years. I was not there to see it. I grew into it, but we're doing a lot more. The VMware portfolio is actually quite extensive, and we're doing loads of things in the modern application space, in the cloud space. So I'll stay here. So let's start. I have a brief introduction, and then we'll move into the subjects. So these kind of graphs are always interesting, not interesting. You can read those on many blogs, web pages, and other kinds of sources. Most of the vendors will dazzle you with these numbers, but the main idea is that modern applications are becoming more important. There's more and more applications coming into enterprise. Enterprises need to deliver their applications into production much quicker and quicker. There's an explosion of number of deployments. There's an explosion in number of environments that a company might have. And somehow the IT infra and the developers, and they have to learn how to work together, and they have to manage all of that securely and properly. So that's not an easy thing, right? So there's all kinds of studies. There's yearly reports. Companies that do this well, they really excel in their business. They are faster than their competition. These are kind of like common sense things, but it's not that easy to get into that state. A lot of the larger enterprises, as in government, big banks, insurance companies, they are quite siloed over the last years. They've become that way. And there's a little thing called Conway's Law that says that your structure of your organization will start resembling the software that you built. So if you have a database team and a storage team, and you have a team in insurance and a team in payments, your software will actually start looking like that and start being built in those silos as well. So what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve business outcomes. I think within VMware Tanzu, we really want to drive those business outcomes. We're not only a technology company, we are a technology company, but we want to deliver business outcomes to people and to companies, like how fast can you go to production with a new application? How many times can you release into production? When you have a new business idea, how quickly can you get it into production, hopefully in an automated way, or as automated as possible? It's really trying to get companies to be a differentiator in the market and reduce the costs. So they have all these strategies, long-term strategies, where what are we going to do with our workloads? Are we going to keep running them on-prem and modernize our infrastructure and modernize the data center? That's something that VMware is helping in. Are we going to move to the cloud some of the workloads to make most of, like we have connectivity to Lambdas, or we can start using stuff like regular S3 buckets, or we just want to run some VMs on EC2. And how do we connect those two worlds? A lot of common problems that you see. Large companies are not going to move everything in one go to the cloud. It just doesn't work that way. So they need kind of a strategy to move that way. So you need to analyze your application portfolio, your application landscape. There will be a lot of different beasts to handle. But we can help with that. We can help you scanning your portfolio. We can have automated tools go through your vSphere environment on-prem, identify the applications that are communicating to each other, so the dependency between applications, and then we can help you set up that roadmap of which applications are we going to keep in the same place because they're not changing, it's not needed. Which applications are we going to throw away and replace with another service? Which applications are we going to change a little bit so that we can just lift and shift them to another platform like Amazon? Or which ones are we actually going to modernize and make sure that we can run them in a modern way, release every day, fast changes, so that it can adapt to market trends more quickly. So all these 5 R's are a thing that you see coming back all the time it's not an easy way to actually do this and build this roadmap for your landscape, for your company, but that's something we can help with. So this is a very busy slide. I don't really like it, but it goes to show just how many things we're doing in this space. And this is stuff that we can do on top of Amazon. So Amazon has lots of services to help you with. They have a lot of primitives. Sometimes connecting those primitives is quite a challenge, right? You have to make sure it's secure, that all the IAM settings are correct, that the people that are supposed to be doing the things are the only ones that do those things. You probably want to run on a higher abstraction level, maybe on Kubernetes, maybe on Fargate. Running stuff in containers is more consistent, so you'll have that kind of need. You want to network the things together. You want to manage all of those Kubernetes clusters, for example. So you have a lot of things to do. We can help in various aspects there. People will probably have access to the slides afterwards, so you can have an easy read on what to do. But what we try to excel at is really in VMware Tanzu, is developing applications, delivering them into production, and giving you tools, platform, and also a methodology of managing those modern applications. And it's not always only about new applications. It's also a lot about how can we modernize our old legacy mainframe or large application servers or legacy 4GL progress application or whatever. How can we migrate that into a modern architecture step by step? That's what we want to do with Tanzu. We want to just give you the different tooling and methodology to do that. So we help you build resilient applications, which means applications that are built to fail. And that's what a lot of the new companies do. You try to adapt to failure. So at any given point, your application at some point will fail. So you better be prepared for it. That's what, for example, chaos engineering is all about. You just let random pieces of your infra fail, like a network or a disk or a drive, and your application will just need to handle that. It's what Netflix has done and pioneered, really. So it's what you should do in your new architecture as well. We want to have very fast developer cycles, so going through an iteration very quickly. I believe that, for example, any commit that you, as a developer, put into Git on the main branch should be a candidate for production as long as it goes through your testing and CI/CD pipeline. That's why else are you committing to main branch, right? So those are kind of like the best practices there. It's not an easy thing to achieve, but that should be your goal, in my opinion. If you're building these automated path to production, as I like to call them, with CI/CD pipelines, you want to make sure that security is baked in as soon as possible. You want to have application security, but then you want to have a way of patching your application, patching the underlying infrastructure. In the case of Kubernetes, you want to patch or upgrade Kubernetes, so we can help with that. And we're kind of like having three main points where we can help, three general areas in Tanzu. Tanzu is more kind of like a portfolio, it's not one thing. On the right, we have VMware Tanzu for Kubernetes operations. So we can help you set up Kubernetes on-prem, on Amazon. We can help you manage those Kubernetes clusters, patch them, scale them, and make it self-service. So if you're on Amazon, you might as well just do EKS. But we could do Tanzu Kubernetes on Amazon running on EC2. We would manage the whole lifecycle and manage the VMs and the patching and the scaling. But this is, in my opinion, only viable if you also do on-prem Kubernetes. So that's kind of like the selling point. You would have Tanzu Kubernetes on-prem and on Amazon, both managed exactly the same way. If you don't want to do that on Amazon, just use EKS. It's completely managed, so you have much less to do even. But what we also do is, on top of Kubernetes, there's a lot of things to make sure are done before you can get to a production state. You have to manage IAM, security, network policies, access policies to the clusters. If you want to do pod security policies or using open policies on Kubernetes, we have the Tanzu Mission Control to actually help you manage that across your clusters. And we do this in SaaS-based services. So we have Tanzu Mission Control, Tanzu Service Mesh for connecting those clusters together in a secure way, and Tanzu Observability to have a observability platform for your entire stack. So on-prem, on Amazon, all going into the same platform, giving you dashboards where you can see full stack information from your application to Kubernetes, to the VMs, to the underlying infra if you want. So it really gives you a global dashboard for everything and for troubleshooting. Then on the left side, we have the application platform, which is relatively new, and it's meant to really elevate the how you look at workloads. So on a Kubernetes platform, you look at workloads in terms of containers. You connect containers, you build containers, you scale containers or pods, etc. And you think about that as a concept. If you elevate it to an application platform, you don't really care. You want to push an application to that cluster. It needs to know how it needs to be run. It needs to run a container, needs to connect to a database, needs to do all those kind of things, but the developer doesn't really care, or he shouldn't care. It's good to know what's going on, but in his day-to-day life, a developer wants to build features, build his application, throw it through a CI/CD pipeline, make sure everything is working, and push it to production. And it needs to be as automated as possible. So that's what the application platform is all about. And then we have our experts in Tanzu Labs, which is our consultancy department, who really help you modernize old applications, build containers, deploy them into production. We can help the platform people or the operations people to really build a platform as a product, think about it that way, really help you with the best practices in this regard, because I think that's a very underdeveloped area. We as vendors like to sell solutions, we sell platforms, we sell products, and then you see the adoption of the platform really slowing down. I see a lot of companies that have a Kubernetes platform, whichever it is, and after 3 years, they have a couple of applications in production. That's typically not the kind of return on investment that we're looking for, or that the company is looking for. So you need to really put a lot of work in making the platform easy to adopt, making for a really good developer experience. And that's what our people at Tanzu Labs are trying to teach companies. And that's what the application platform is trying to offer you, like a really easy way of deploying any kind of workload on a platform. And we don't care on which Kubernetes, but preferably it's EKS or Tanzu Kubernetes, wherever it's running. So as I said, all of these operations in really a truly DevSecOps kind of organization, all of these operations need to be done. So there's not only like, give me a platform and I'll put stuff in production. There's a whole lot to really look at, especially in the cloud-native container kind of world. So I'll skip through these nice animations here. This is kind of like what I explained. We as VMware try to be like the Switzerland of clouds. We don't really care where you take your workload. We try to offer you the choice. And VMware always says they're an and company, and on-prem, and on Amazon, and. So these are kind of like the options you would have. You could run Tanzu Kubernetes on your private cloud. You could run it on VMC on AWS. You could even run it on Amazon Outposts on-prem. So that's an option. And you could just run Tanzu Kubernetes on EC2 on Amazon. There are some pros and cons to all of these. If you want more information, just come to the booth afterwards or read up on it. We don't really want to be disruptive or restrictive. We want to be open and give you the choice. Same thing for the application platform, as I said. It really runs on any Kubernetes. So it's something that you install on Kubernetes and just configure and use. And then, as I said, Labs is really into, we help you really build products and not do projects. Projects have a begin and an ending date. Products are really there as long as they're needed by the business. So you do continuous development on that product. It will keep evolving. If it has an end date and it gets thrown to the operations people, then it's going to die a slow death or just be there fixed and never change. If that's okay by the business, that's good, but typically the business is changing more and more rapidly anyway. So that's what the labs does. And we have a lot of customers and customer references to back that up. This is an example of a government agency in, am I supposed to say it? I don't know, in France. So people could guess. They had a very large mainframe. They were paying many millions per year for it, as one does with a mainframe. And we actually took them on a journey of splitting up that mainframe piece by piece. So there was one piece of the mainframe that was actually just the login or the authentication piece, where a lot of people needed to use those services at a specific time on Monday morning to do something. So it's an unemployment agency. So all the people that are unemployed needed to basically, how do you call it, log into the system, indicate that they're still looking for a job. So there was a very narrow period of time where there's a lot of logins, a lot of load on the system. And we actually took them through a journey of mapping out that whole process, figuring out where in the mainframe this process was being used, and we pulled it out and built a modern component out of it. And then you have a lot of architectural patterns to actually deploy this separately on a new platform, while the old mainframe is still working and doing all the other stuff. So we helped them with that. We did it once, we did it twice, we did it a couple of times in a matter of weeks. So the first one was about 6 weeks when we did that. We put it in production. That's typically what we like to do. Very short engagements where we show something working in production, something that is valuable for the business, and rather than months or years, right? So working iteratively. After the second and the third one, they were quite confident that they had the process of doing this completely, they knew how to do it. So they were quite confident. They had a partner, a French partner that could scale up. So they did this across many, many teams, and they scaled up these best practices internally. And then they started working on the, I think, 9,000 or 10,000 other kind of business processes in that mainframe. So that was 2 years ago. They're still working on it, but they're like really scaling up those efforts and trying to get out of that mainframe piece by piece. So it is possible. This was actually a company that went through this process of modernizing the mainframe or getting rid of the mainframe. I think they already tried it 4 times and failed 4 times. So we do this in a lot of financial companies as well, banks and insurance. And we see that we're typically the first one to actually succeed in modernizing at least a piece of the mainframe. And then I guess it's up to my friend Gilles. Thank you.
Okay, so now let's have a look a little bit on how we are going to implement all these VMware environment inside the Amazon infrastructure. For that, we have developed a co-engineering with AWS themselves, and we released VMware Cloud on AWS a couple of years ago. So as we described, the application, they really have to live somewhere in a cloud, on-prem, in your data center, whatever the best environment is for your application. As Dieter described, we are looking at the 5 R. And the R is like, do I need to re-platform this application? Are you going to refactor or rebuild completely? Because now moving to the cloud is not an easy task. Maybe I can change the host and migrate, or I can leave it in the data center itself, or I can completely get rid of it. It's a really old application. So for that, we have multiple type of infrastructure. We can run on-prem, we can run in the cloud, native, we can run in the cloud with VMware stack, and this is really something that we are looking into very deeply. And for us, the best type of environment is really a hybrid environment, meaning you don't move everything to the cloud, you don't keep everything on-prem, but some applications are going to be in the cloud, some of them are going to stay on-prem, and you're going to end up with a hybrid environment. So there are many challenges, I should say, with a hybrid environment. First of all, there are inconsistency. If you move into AWS native and you look at what you have on-prem, these are completely different environments. Operationally, it's different. You also need different skills, because if you move into AWS native environment, it's not the same way you manage like you had on-prem with VMware and vSphere. So this is really a little bit difficult, and you lose agility if you decide to refactor your application. It takes a lot of time. Many people are failing doing that. And it's very high risk, because you take an application that you know is working well on-prem and you try to migrate it natively to the cloud. It's quite difficult. It takes time and a lot of cost also. So what we really want to bring into this hybrid model is a consistent infrastructure. It doesn't matter if you are on-prem or if you are in the cloud. We want to give you a consistent infrastructure. And for that, VMware and AWS have decided to join forces and develop a solution, which is the VMware Cloud on AWS. And it started in October 2016, when AWS started to deploy or make availability of bare metal infrastructure. So for us, it was really a trigger. When AWS announced the bare metal infrastructure, we decided to take this bare metal and develop a full stack VMware on this infrastructure. We could not do that with a regular AMI, because the AMI is already virtualized. So you don't put virtualization on top of virtualization. But if you have a bare metal host, we can take a couple of them, create a cluster, and deploy the complete stack on top of it. So this was very interesting cooperation, mainly on networking, okay? Because AWS didn't know what is a layer 2, okay? So we had to work together with AWS on how we can create a cluster, how we can grab infrastructure with API, because we don't want anybody to be involved in the fact that, yes, I have a cluster, I need to add one host. Okay, I want to do that automatically. Okay, so everything is automated. We grab infrastructure from AWS on bare metal hardware, and we can deploy the full stack VMware. So we announced the general availability in August 2017, just after 1 year. And then the year passed, and we add a lot of features, more than 200 features in the last 3-4 years. Recently, we have announced the availability of AWS Outpost. So we can now have VMC on AWS Outpost, not only in the region, but also in your local environment if you really need this type of infrastructure. And a couple of weeks ago, we announced the availability of VMware Cloud on AWS in the marketplace. So you can go to AWS Marketplace and actually purchase VMware Cloud on AWS directly. So what are the benefits of having a VMware cloud environment in AWS. First of all, it's really easy to migrate because now we have a very low risk. We don't do anything. We don't touch the application, okay? And why? Because we create a software-defined data center in AWS infrastructure. So we have a bare metal infrastructure. We deploy the software on top of it. It takes about 2 hours to do it. And then at the end of the day, you have like a new data center. But it's a VMware one. At the end of the day, we give you vSphere to manage. So you have it on-prem, you have it in the cloud. You can actually migrate very easily. It's consistent with what you know. You don't need to learn anything new. If I give you access to vCenter in the cloud, you will not see any difference from vCenter on-prem. It's the same. And so it's very easy to migrate the workload. But that gives you also the infrastructure, once we have this migration, to modernize these applications. Internally at VMware, we call it M&Ms. Okay, M&Ms, migrate and modernize. So the move to VMware Cloud on AWS. If we start from what you have on-prem, you have your data center, you have vSphere that manage your data center. So how do we migrate to the cloud? First, we go into AWS region and we grab a couple of hosts, which are bare metal hosts. And on this bare metal host, we create a software stack, a full stack from VMware. So with the 3 pillars, okay? vSphere for compute, vSAN for storage, NSX for networking. And then on top of that, we give you a vCenter. So we have your vCenter on-prem, you have the vCenter in the cloud. Well, the first thing to do is to link them together, okay? So once you link them together, you have a global view of what's happening. I mean, you see your on-prem environment, but you also see the cloud environment because we link the 2 vCenter together. And so we can start migrating application. But that's not all. Because next to what we have in the cloud, we have the full AWS environment with all AWS services, EC2, relational database, S3, Lambda function. So all these functions, we work with Amazon to be able to give access to native AWS functions for VMware VMs, okay? So the VMs that you have in the cloud have now a network link dedicated to access a relational database or to access S3 or any type of service that is native within AWS. So this is something unique because now you have a VMware SDDC, so the software-defined data center, running your VM that you migrated from on-prem. But now those VMs have also access to AWS resources. So we have special tools for the migration. We have the capability also to implement Tanzu, vRealize, any type of management, and all the VMware third-party that were working with the on-prem infrastructure. So in terms of enterprise availability and security, so we have vSphere, and it's the same vSphere, maybe even a little more modern because we always have the latest and greatest vSphere release in the cloud, where we can build the redundancy and the failure protection and everything you know about vSphere. We use NSXT in terms of network and security. So within NSXT, we have multiple functions like distributed firewalls that are integrated, but also higher level of firewall, up to layer 7, to give you micro-segmentation, granular policy, and all the threat detection that you need in a modern data center. And then we have vSAN. vSAN is also the storage management. We can create policy-driven storage and really get even different type of performance. And the storage is actually built from the AWS hardware itself. So when we grab a bare metal server, it has already storage in it, NVMe drive, so high performance. And then we create from that a virtual SAN that we encrypt with KMS and give you a rich set of capabilities like deduplication and compression. So that gives you a very cost-effective and rapid way to do this migration with no risk, because you don't touch your VM. Whatever is running on-prem on a VMware environment will run in the cloud on a VMware environment. So this is for you a no-brainer. You can just take applications, workloads, and migrate them even live, if you need to the cloud. And I remember the first time we did a vMotion from on-prem to the cloud, it was, brain blowing, something amazing. But today, this is like normal. We have 2 data centers. Okay, the second one is in the cloud, but we can really do vMotion from on-prem to the cloud. And we have specific tools to do that, because vMotion is fine, but we have other tools that are, let's say, giving you optimization, building the tunnels automatically, deduplication also. So you really want, if you migrate a lot of VMs, you want to be scalable. The most difficult part of migrating a VM is the storage. You need time to migrate all this storage, and sometimes it takes time. Okay, there is nothing to do about it. But once the storage is in the cloud, the vMotion is a piece of cake. And then you have now a hybrid cloud environment infrastructure for your operation. You have compatibility between the on-prem existing and the cloud in terms of management. You have the security, wide area network optimization, and if you need, also layer 2 extension. And so you get a rich ecosystem of proven partner solutions that will also work in the cloud. So we have a couple of use cases for that. The first one is, like Dieter explained, the next generation application, where you can build new application, Kubernetes-based application. But we can also build what I call hybrid applications. And sometimes people say, yeah, okay, I have 95% of my data center virtualized. But what are the 5% that are not virtualized? Usually big database. So what do we do with that? The big databases are not VMs. They cannot move to VMC. So what do we do with that? The best way is to take these databases and move them native in AWS. Because AWS have a lot of different solutions for any type of database. Once you do that, then you can create this hybrid application where the front-end application is in the cloud, it's virtualized, okay, on VMC, and the database is native on AWS. And you have a link a private link network. This is, by the way, 25 gig network link that does not cost you anything, that only belongs to you, that will allow the front-end application to talk to the back-end in AWS. So this is quite nice. The cloud migration is important. Data center extension, so many people say, okay, my data center is getting full. I don't want to buy new hardware. I don't have space for new hardware. So if I want to grow, I will be able to use the cloud as an extension. Or I can do this on demand if sometimes I need expansion on demand. Very simple. Also, virtual desktop. If I need some burst of virtual desktop, I can burst in the cloud because I have the same infrastructure. I can use the same VMware software for virtual desktop, the same like I have on cloud in the on-prem today. And last but not least is disaster recovery. Yes, we have special software for disaster recovery, also VMware service, where you're going to use the cloud as your disaster recovery. So the way we do that is that you don't need to invest in a physical disaster recovery. And if you have one, maybe you can close it and get the cloud as a disaster recovery. We have special software for that. So it could be an addition, it could be a replacement, but today it's very interesting that your data center on-prem can have a disaster recovery in the cloud. So recently, we have added to the family AWS Outpost. AWS Outpost is an infrastructure that is coming from AWS itself. So it's a rack that is AWS managed, that is sitting in your data center, where you can also have VMware Cloud. And the way we do that is that you can consider VMware AWS Outpost as an extension of a region into your data center. Why we need that? Well, sometimes there are limitations. We need very low latency, and the 10 or 20 milliseconds to go to Frankfurt is too big. So we need local latency. We have regulatory reasons or sovereignty reasons that the data should be in the data center. And sometimes we really want to process the data locally. So for that, we need some kind of hardware on-prem. But hey, I don't want to deal with hardware anymore. The whole idea of moving to the cloud is to get a service. So, okay, we can use AWS Outpost in your data center, and that's going to be a VMware service. You're going to get the best of both environments. So this is an architecture of AWS Outpost. At the end of the day, very similar to what I described before, where I have an Outpost rack now in the data center, which is seen as an extension of Frankfurt or London or whatever region you want, where I have the same stack, VMware stack, that I could deploy on the region. Now I deploy it on the hardware in VMware, in AWS Outpost in your data center. So this is a very big benefit because now you have it as a service, but it's local to your environment. Application locality, data sovereignty for the regulations, data center app modernization, you can do it on Outpost as well. The hybrid cloud model is still there, but now everything is local, and eventually the service is to extend to the cloud. Next to that, we have a software environment called Cloud Health. And this type of software is here to build a cloud center of excellence. So with this software, we want to analyze your cloud environment. We want to analyze the cost. We want to try and benefit from everything that we have in the cloud. And we see with Cloud Health that there are over $20 billion in management that is spent in cloud management. And over 150 governance policies that are enabled. It's a lot. Over 29 million security and compliance violations that people sometimes don't know about it. So it is very important to have a software that is able to analyze your environment and get you visibility or optimization in terms of governance, automation, business integration. So Cloud Health is here to build this cloud of excellence in terms of everything you can do with that. Cost and usage, visibility. So I will analyze everything, your AWS environment, the VMware cloud environment, everything I can analyze and give you a report about the cost and where you can optimize. The resource applications, okay? Am I using the right size? Maybe I'm using too much of this or not enough of that. So Cloud Health is here to be able to give you a complete view analytics and eventually add or help you in terms of automation. What should I do and how can I use this type of software to get the best of everything? So at the end of the day, how do I get started with VMware Cloud on AWS? Very simple. First, you need to evaluate the migration scope. Okay? So you say, yes, I'm interested. I want to take these workloads or these applications, migrate them to the cloud. For that, I need to do a proper sizing around what do I need in terms of storage? What do I need in terms of memory, in terms of CPU? Everything. I need to be able to do a proper sizing. The best way to do that is to send us RV tools, Excel, and we have special software that will take the RV tools and plug it inside and pop out. You need this type of cluster, that amount of hosts. It will analyze everything. Once you do that, you deploy SDDC host in the region of your choice. You want to go to Frankfurt or Paris, Dublin, Stockholm, any regions, we have the VMware Cloud Service. Once this is deployed, and it takes 2 hours to deploy a 4-node cluster, for example, and it takes 10 minutes to add another node, then you apply the networking and the security, very important. So you take the networking and security, you create your security groups, you create your security rules, your firewall, east-west traffic, north-south traffic. Once you have that, then you can use HCX, which is the tool for the migration, and migrate your VMs from on-prem to the cloud. This is a nice exercise. We've done it with many customers. And really, this is an easy way that we give you, the customer, the ability to migrate your workload without touching your applications.